1, 2, 3. Раз, два.
Продовжимо роботу.
We continue our working day at Ukraine Crisis Media Center, and I give the floor to Colonel Olександр Мотузяник, Presidential Administration Spokesman on ATO-related issues with information about the events in the ATO area during the last 24 hours. Welcome on stage. Good afternoon, everyone, and now the information about the events in the ATO area during the last 24 hours. In Lugansk area, the enemy violated ceasefire at two areas in Popasna and near Stanitsa Luganska. In the early morning, the militants shelled the positions of ATO forces in Nurubievka village, that is to the north of Popasna, and late in the evening in Popasna, the militants used APCs. And also the Stanitsa Luganska, the enemy was active after sunset and delivered 3 shellings. Overall, the length was about 3 hours, and at that, the enemy didn't use heavy weapons. On the whole, during the last 24 hours in Lugansk area, there were 9 enemy shellings, including 1 with the use of artillery 122 millimeters. In the Donetsk area, the situation remains tense. The military actions are carried out along the front line, except the region of the Donetsk airport. It was come there yesterday. The militants carry out sporadic provocations during the day and they become more active at night, and they use the weaponry of larger caliber. In the evening, they usually use mortars. The same scenario is at the part of the front line, starting from Svetlodarsk to the western suburbs of Gorlovka. In Avdiivka production area, the tactics of the militants is different. They use heavy weapons openly by the enemy and during the day, and ATO forces return fire. On the whole, in Donetsk area, there were 23 enemy shellings, including 12 with the use of heavy weapons. In Mariupol area, the intensity of militants increased. The militants delivered 4 artillery shellings. One was at 1 a.m. in Marienka, and the militants used artillery also near Rybinska, that is 7 kilometers to the east from Volnovakha, and at 2:30 a.m. the militants used 122 millimeter cans near Chermalik. And there, in 1 hour, they launched about 60 shells, and also the enemy fired at Ukrainian positions near Novosilovka. Also in Krasnogorovka, Slavno-Lebedinsk, and Shirokinem, the militants used mortars. On the whole, in Mariupol area, the enemy launched more than 130 artillery shells and more than 80 mortar mines. On the whole, during the last 24 hours in Mariupol area, there were 20 shellings delivered by the militants, half of them with the use of heavy weapons. During the last 24 hours, in the result of the military actions, no Ukrainian serviceman was killed. 8 our servicemen were wounded. Losses of the militants during the last 24 hours, 4 killed and 5 were wounded. According to information provided by the Chief Intelligence Department of MOD, the militants got weaponry near Piski and in the region of Mariinka. Russia brought reactive fire launchers that is called Shmel, and also they brought 15 tanks of fuel and lubricants to Rovinki and 10 railway cars with ammunition to Dovzhansk village, where before the war was stationary checkpoint. And also the intelligence service informed that discipline among the militants fall. The militants are not satisfied being at the front line, and they are forced to carry out subversive activities. That's why Russian commanders paid a part of the money that they should have paid to the militants. And there is alcohol abuse among the militants, and the commander of a platoon of so-called 6th Motorized Regiment, Eduard Tshoverbov, injured one of his subordinates, and also because of traffic accident caused by drunk driver, one militant died and 2 were injured. So their names are Sergei Savenko, Roman Belych, and also Alexander Ilyin. And because of massive alcohol abuse, the militants of so-called 9th Regiment damaged their own air drone, and in Lugansk there was a riot, and 4 militants who were wounded while they were trying to suppress this riot. These are names Artem Gorbachev, Mikita Sukharevsky, Alexander Onищенко, and Roman Shevchenko. SBU detained the 2 militants. One of them is resident of Gorlovka. Starting January, he took part in military actions against ATO forces. He was detained while he was trying to cross Zaitsevo checkpoint. One more militant was found in Novodruzhevsk town in Luganshina. In June 2014, he joined Ghost militant group. He patrolled the streets, and after Novodruzhevsk was liberated, this militant was hiding from law enforcers. And one more militant got opportunity to live freely in Ukraine. This man was among the militants in Slavyansk in spring 2014. Then he left the militants, and he was hiding from law enforcers. But then in May 2016, he voluntarily turned himself in to SBU, and now he is exempt from criminal liability because it was identified that this man didn't commit any heavy crime. Thank you. If you have questions, no questions. So traditionally, tomorrow at 12:30, we will have the next briefing of Presidential Administration spokesman.